Good morning. It's good to see all of you online today. I'm Jo Celine, OUUC Media Specialist. I use they, them, or she, her pronouns. Welcome to all who are joining us on whatever platform you are using. We use the Zoom chat feature for greetings, song lyrics, affirmations and applause, and items shared from the heart. The chat is not posted or shared publicly. If you experience any technical issues during the service, you can reach out to me or any other member of the tech team for assistance when the chat is on. And last, I hope you will find a candle or a chalice, and in a moment we can light them together. We appreciate your grace and adaptability, and we all remember it's about connection, not perfection.
Good morning. Oops, got to get the right camera on. You could watch my hands talk, but I don't have any puppets today. So we're going to sing for our morning song for all the saints, hymn number 103 in the gray hymnal. You can find the lyrics posted in the chat, and I'm going to bring up a camera view so you can see some of the choir who are here singing with us today. Singing.
Good morning. Happy Halloween. Welcome to the Olympia Unitarian Universalist Congregation online worship service. We welcome each of you to this celebration of love and to this congregation. The OUUC community comes together in the mutual promises and possibilities of our covenant. We envision an interconnected world that is loving, just, and healthy. We commit to live out our mission to welcome and wonder, embrace and empower, bridge and become, and we're so glad that you are here. My name is Mclaughlin. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a member of the worship arts team.
And good morning. My name is Liz Clement. I'm here with Emmy today. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm also a member of our worship arts team. Leading worship with us today is our minister, the Reverend Mary Gear, Troy Fisher, our music director, and Sarah Lewis, our director of community and faith development. We are grateful for the many hands that helped make worship happen this morning. Thank you to the breakout room hosts, the tech team members, the singers in the commons, and all who contribute in so many ways. After the service, everyone will have the chance to discuss reflection questions offered by Reverend Mary. We invite you to go into a breakout room for a virtual coffee chat, a chance to gather with a small group to say hello and to check in. Each breakout room will be hosted by someone to help make sure everyone knows each other and has a chance to share. We hope you'll join the discussion.
In celebration of Halloween, we'll hold a trunk or treat this afternoon from 3 to 5 in the OUUC parking lot. Come to hand out candy or trick and treat, or trick or treat. Everyone is welcome, costumes or not. The Thursday evening spiritual practice this week will be with Reverend Mary and Ann Colbury, joined by Troy Fisher for music. This week will be a reflection on the November spiritual theme of Just. Look for the link on the OUUC website to join at 7 p.m. Thursday. And a reminder that next Sunday is Daylight Savings Time. Yay! We gain an hour, so don't forget to set your clocks back. There are many opportunities to stay connected to our community. Please check back at the website regularly. If you have questions or need help, please check in with a staff member. Now, let us open our hearts and minds as we prepare for worship. Welcome, everyone. It is good to be together. This morning and every Sunday morning, we join Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition. Please join me as we light our chalices together with these words by Mary Edie's. Like the cosmic dust following after a great Perseid meteor, we are the living remnants of time and all that has come to pass in its wake, briefly shining lights on the way to eternity. We are only visible to the naked eye for an instant. Take this moment to shine like the stardust you are. May the light of our time on earth shine to bless the world and each other. Shine, shine, shine.
Good morning and happy Halloween. Our opening words this morning are Welcome to All Manner of Creatures by Christian Schmidt. No matter who or what you are welcome here. Let's be clear. Here we welcome goblins and ghouls, saints and sinners, angels and devils, zombies and werewolves, vampires and witches. We welcome princes and princesses, paupers and farmhands, aliens and astronauts, robots and cyborgs, firefighters and police officers, nurses and doctors, cowboys, cowgirls, cowfolk of all varieties. We welcome Superman, Wonder Woman, Black Panther, Batman, Spider-Man, Black Widow, and Thor. Indeed, we welcome both superheroes and superstars. In short, we welcome people, monsters, and all other manner of creatures. Here, we welcome you and all of who and what you are. Welcome. And come, let us worship together.
And let's sing together again. We're going to sing Come, Come, Whoever You Are. It's hymn number 188 in the hymnal. or you can find the lyrics posted in the chat. Let's sing it together one time, and then we'll break into a round. And you can join in the round wherever you want. Once we start the round 3 times through, and when you're done with your 3 times through, then if you're here in the sanctuary, you can sit down, or at home, you can stop, or you can join another group and keep on singing. So great to hear around. Thank you for singing.
Well, as it is Halloween, I get to tell you a ghost story this morning. This is an old English fairy tale, first written down by Flora Annie Steele, and it's called The Bogey Beast. There was once an old woman who was always very, very cheerful, even though she didn't really have any reason to be. She was very poor. She lived all alone in a cottage that was falling apart. She often didn't have enough to eat, and she just barely eked by doing errands and chores for her neighbors and receiving some kindnesses. But nonetheless, she was always very cheerful. And one day she was trotting on down the lane, happily as ever, when she spotted in the ditch a black pot that someone had dropped there. She thought, well, goodness, that's a very useful item to throw away. I wonder who could have done that. And she looked around, expecting to find the owner nearby, but there was no one to be seen. She thought, maybe it has a hole in it, and that's why they threw it away. But even if it has a hole in it, why, I could put a flower in it and put it by my front door, and that would still be very nice. So what a lucky day for me. I have found something useful to take home. And she dragged it up out of the ditch, and then she lifted the lid and looked inside, and she gasped because it was full of gold coins. A pot of gold? I found a pot of gold, she exclaimed. Why, how lucky am I? I can't even imagine all the things I can do with gold. I'll have to bury it in the garden, of course, to keep the neighbors from stealing it, but still, a pot of gold is amazing. It was too heavy to lift and carry home, though, so she had to just take one end of her shawl and tie it to the handle and then drag it behind her down the road. And she did this for a while until she grew weary, and so she stopped and turned around to look back. And the strangest thing, the pot of gold was gone, and now her shawl was just tied around a lump of silver. How did I think this was a pot of gold? She asked herself, rubbing her eyes. I must have been dreaming, or my eyesight is going. Well, a lump of silver is actually a better thing anyway. A pot of gold would have just gotten me into trouble, but a lump of silver, why, that'll be easier to trade. So I'm really glad What a lucky day. I am so lucky. And she began to drag the lump of silver home. And she dragged it along down the road for a while until she grew tired and paused. And this time when she looked back, now her shawl was not tied around a lump of silver, but rather a lump of iron. She paused again, rubbed her eyes. Oh my, I'm making so many mistakes today. What could be wrong with me? But you know what? A lump of iron is much better than a lump of silver anyway, because silver still attracts thieves, and with a lump of iron, I can trade it for some penny pieces, and I will be well off with some extra penny pieces for the winter. So what a lucky day that I found a lump of iron to bring home. She continued to drag it on down the road for a while. And this time when she paused to look back, it was no longer a lump of iron, but now her shawl was just tied around a big rock. Rubbing her eyes again, she thought, oh, I truly am having some troubles today. I must be dreaming. But isn't it lucky that I have found a big rock, because I have been wanting one to hold open the garden gate. And so she continued to drag this big rock home. And she got it there and went to roll it into place and see how it fit with the gate. And then, as she untied her shawl from around the rock, suddenly it transformed into a giant being bigger than a haystack with long legs, and it shrieked and it howled and it ran off into the night, screaming like a horse that had escaped from hell. The woman stood there in shock. And then she began to laugh and laugh and laugh. Why, it was the bogey beast all along, she said. How lucky am I that I got to have an adventure all to myself with the bogey beast tonight. Why, I will have a story to tell forevermore. Truly, I am the luckiest. And she went into her cottage, happy as she always was. Thus ends our story.
This month, we've held a stewardship drive to ask for financial pledges to help sustain the work of this congregation. The staff, the building, the technology, all the infrastructure exists to support the vision and mission of this community. We're coming to the end of the stewardship drive, so if you haven't pledged yet, this would be a really good time. And for inspiration on your way, the stewardship team wants to share their favorite recording from these past few weeks.
You know, I think about the resilience of our congregation. Look at what we've done. We have amazing Zoom church services. We continue to do other activities through Zoom. We do what we need to do. If we come to church, we wear masks. You know, the choir sings outside. I mean, we just meet the need for ourselves and the community, no matter what's going on. And it's been quite an experience, but we've stepped up to it, and we will continue to do that in the future.
There's a strong theme in this church of caring for the homeless, caring for justice. Yeah, remember marching for, well, various justice initiatives that were there at the Capitol and marching down Capitol Way. our church together. It's been really wonderful.
Well, I've participated in the church in several ways. I was a celebrant for many years, and I found that very enriching to be closely involved with planning services and to have the opportunity to read wonderful readings and just really understand more about what service, the actual Sunday service means. I've participated by being a board member, and I certainly learned a lot about how this church just doesn't exist by itself, that it takes staff, and we have wonderful, amazing staff, and it takes planning, it takes organization, and it takes money to keep this church going. I think before I was a board member, I never stopped to think about all of the structures and pieces of the organization itself, what it takes to really keep a wonderful church alive.
I feel like it's really important that this community be here, and I was part of the fundraising for this building back in the early 90s. That was one of my first activities, was being on the committee that did the capital campaign for building this building. So kind of seeing contributions turn into something very concrete. But the other thing that's really important to me is that we pay our staff fairly. I think the folks we have that support us as a congregation are really amazing, and I want to see them fairly compensated. And I think I'm really proud of our share of the plate and the fact that we contribute to organizations outside of our church, and I think we're able to do that because we have people pledging, and we're able to give away some of that collection plate because we have people regularly supporting us. So those are some of the things that go into my decision to pledge.
When I first came to the church, I wasn't working, so I didn't have a lot to give, and I felt a little bit embarrassed by it, but I thought, well, it is what it is. And then each year I've given more, and I think that reflects the church and the acknowledgement that we give what we can, and I think a lot of us do give more over time, whether it's in terms of time or money or what have you. It's part of growing with the church and getting connected. So yeah, it's been a process for me, and it's been a good one.
Okay, as far as my money or treasure, whichever word you'd prefer, the way I've been doing it for the last several years is that I take it from my minimum required distribution from my IRA at the end of the year. And that way Uncle Sam gets to pay a piece of it, whether Uncle Sam knows it or not. And I can be just that much more generous, I guess you'd say.
It's important to me to put my resources into things that matter to me, and that there's a lot of causes you can support, but this one is, I benefit from it personally, but it's also something that I see what happens with the money. I see where it goes. I see what we're able to do with it, and I feel like that this community supports people who then go out and do a lot of other good in the world, and I think that's really important to me, to invest in the things I care about.
So we live in a country where there's separation of church and state for a really good reason, and one of the ways that exhibits itself differently for us here in the United States than maybe elsewhere around the world is that we do have to take responsibility to support our congregation and take that seriously and really lend our treasure to the community.
A friend of mine, he was passing the hat with for a really good organization, and he said, "Give until it hurts." And I think, no. I like giving until it feels good.
A deep bow of gratitude to Eric Ness and all who are working and have worked on the stewardship campaign this month. And thank you to all of you for your generous pledges. We came together in community this morning, bringing all that is in our lives. In this space, we draw on the strength of our community to hold and love all that we bring here with us. In this space, we share from our hearts what brings us joy and sorrow, and what brings us worry and delight, what makes us afraid and what makes us dance. Let's open our hearts to the complexity of life, our own and others. If you would like to send in something to share, please look for the link on the online worship page on the website, and we'll bring it into the service next week. You will hear a drum beat as we share today. It brings into our awareness that our individual hearts beat, and together we create the heartbeat of our community. Right now, let's just take a deep breath together, in and out. And let's open our hearts to receive the complexity of all that is in our lives and community today. Celia and Gary Tobin share the sad news that their son, John, died unexpectedly on October 11th. John was a loving support for Celia and Gary, and the go-to for help when needed. John loved music, and he worked in theater for many years. He was raised at OUUC, and Celia fondly remembers his participation in the holiday plays. John will be missed by his parents, siblings, and extended family. Celia and Gary, we send you our love and care as you mourn another loss in your family. Mclaughlin shares that he is in the middle of a medical adventure, currently in St. Joseph's Hospital in Tacoma. He is scheduled for surgery in the next couple of days and says he is getting good care from the medical staff as well as many family members and friends. He will be fine and hopes to be back in Olympia next week. Riley, we send you our love and care for a successful surgery, followed by a full and speedy recovery. And last, we experienced the joy of music and community last evening. Singing to the harvest moon was a wonderful virtual gathering with good music and costumes. Deep gratitude to all who participated in the cabaret, and a special thanks to producer Troy Fisher and the tech support Mike Kyer and Sharon Love, and all the singers who shared their music. I invite you now to share from your heart by entering in the chat. This is a time to share all that you wish, joys and sorrows and whatever else is shared from your heart. As we take in what is posted, let's hear the heartbeat of our community and reach out our hearts in love and care to all those who share. We'll place a stone in the water for all that has been shared from the heart, a stone holding the complexity of our lives, held in the water of community. And we'll place one more stone in the water for all that we hold in our hearts and that remains unspoken. I invite you now into a time of reflection, prayer, and meditation. Infinite web of life, spirit of love, mystery that is within us and beyond us. In the quiet of this moment, help us listen. Listen to what is stirring in our hearts. Listen to the vibrations of the strands that connect us. Listen to what is calling us into the world. In the quiet of this moment, help us to know ourselves as fully human. It is only in our vulnerability, embracing our glorious imperfection, that we can fully know each other. In the quiet of this moment, help us feel gratitude for all that is good in the world. A quiet moment, a kind word, a helping hand, a deep peace. May giving thanks open our hearts to embrace all that is. In the quiet of this moment, may we know that even though things may not be as we want them to be right now, the doorways to our hearts and souls remain open, open to give and receive, for that is our calling too. In the quiet of this moment, help us to know love, even in the midst of uncertainty and fear. Love overcomes fear. Love overcomes hate. Love overcomes injustice. Love wins, always. Blessed be. Amen. Let's hold a moment of silence together.
Our prayers and meditations deepen our gratitude for what we know is sacred in our lives and in this world. Each Sunday we express our gratitude by joining together in service to our community and to something greater than ourselves. The offering collected here does two things. It supports the ongoing work of OUUC, which is also supported by your regular pledges. This offering also supports an organization that serves our community in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist values. Our Share the Plate recipient for September and October is Rebuilding Together Thurston County. We have a video to share about their work.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Johnson, and I'm Executive Director for Rebuilding Together Thurston County. Our mission is to repair homes, revitalize communities, and rebuild lives for low-income homeowners in our community who need help with everything from ADA modifications to replacing and repairing hot water tanks, building wheelchair ramps, basic needs that they have in their home that they can't afford to do themselves. Most of our homeowners live on $1,150 a month, and many of them live in mobile home parks where their rent is $650 a month. So you can see it leaves them just $500 a month to cover basic expenses. And if something major breaks, then they need us and we need you. So thank you so much for inviting us here today. Thank you so much for supporting us, the congregation's monetary support, as well as any volunteer help that you would like to give the organization would certainly be welcomed. Since our founding in 2003, we've helped over 700 people in Thurston County continue to live in their home. We prevent them from becoming homeless, and they can live in dignity in their own home and their neighborhood with their friends, doctors, and their pets around them. So thank you so much for supporting us. We really, really appreciate it.
Please note that you can participate in the offering by making a donation online through the church website or by texting the number that will appear on your screen in just a moment. You can also mail a check to OUUC. Paul Beadle reminds us that passing the offering plate is never just a practical exercise. It has always been a ritual reminder that form of love we call generosity. Let it be a reminder that after meeting our obligations to ourselves and our households and the communities to which we belong and are committed, we must still keep our capacity to give. The practice of giving until it's second nature and first response helps bring forth the realm of love. May the offering now be generously given as it is gratefully received.
Listen more often to things than to me. Listen more often to things than to me. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the voice of the waters sounds. Those who have died have never left. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling trees. They are in the groaning woods. They are in the crying grass. They are in the moaning rocks. The dead are not under the earth. So listen more often to things than to me. Listen more often to things than to me. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the voice of the waters sounds. Those who have died have never left. The dead are not child. They are with us in our homes. They are with us in this crowd. The dead have a pact with the living. So listen more often to things than to me. Listen more often to things than to me. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the warrior's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the voice of the waters
Thank you for your generous gifts. Today's reading is adapted from Welcoming the Ancestors by Christina Shu and Tara Little. The ritual of welcoming and honoring ancestors is an ancient spiritual practice found in many cultures and traditions. Thus, we begin this ceremony with paying tribute and expressing gratitude to our ancestors.
From our history, our ancestors call to us, asking whence we come, and how, and whither. We are grateful for their gifts, their lessons, and their challenge, calling us into accountability and responsibility to fulfill their hopes and aspirations for what they dreamed be ours to do.
We call on and invoke our parents, grandparents, aunties and uncles, our siblings from across time and place to be here with us.
We call on the early Unitarians and Universalists, lay people and ordained ministers who brought our faith tradition to Washington and the Pacific Northwest.
We call on our ancestors of the Olympia Unitarian Universalist congregation who built, grew, and dreamed this church and this community into being.
We call on those who represent peoples of Olympia, those who strove to build beloved community, representing diverse cultures and traditions, including the indigenous peoples of different tribes.
We call upon our activist ancestors, those who struggled for justice, freedom, and liberation of all people, who challenge us to honor the fullness of each and every human being.
We especially lift up those who battled the racism and oppression right here in Olympia, which is still alive today. They ask us to join in the ongoing struggle to make this city whole.
We call upon and honor the beauty of the earth, this particular part of creation that this church ministers in, the South Sound region and in the shadow of Mount Tahoma, our interconnectedness to nature and to the history of the land itself.
Now we ask you to call to mind your own particular ancestors, family roots, spiritual mentors, and guides. Each one of us brings into the room our own network of people and places.
We have welcomed this great cloud of witnesses to join us today. Can you feel them? May our ancestors guide us on our way. May they bless this space and our time together.
Please, everyone, join us in saying, "Ancestors be with us."
Ancestors, be with us.
Listen more often to things than to me.
So today is Halloween, a day when some of us dress up. Some of us are scary ghosts or goblins or ghouls. Some of us are creatures like witches or vampires or black cats. And some of us are superheroes, some superstars. It's a time to pretend, to gather sweets, and to play. The fact that scary beasts like ghosts and spirits are part of Halloween is not by chance. Some of us believe that at this time of year, the veil between the worlds is thin, and we can connect with those who have gone before us more easily. As we head into the dark months, now is a time when we are aware of life and death. We are invited to remember our ancestors, our cloud of witnesses, and face our own mortality. Last Sunday, Sarah Lewis offered a beautiful message about facing our own death and how uncomfortable that may be. She noted how we have rituals to help us remember our ancestors and remind us of our own life and death. Pagans, those whose spirituality is earth-centered, celebrate Samhain, the beginning of a new year and the winter half of the year. This is a time of the crone, celebrating the coming of darkness. The early Christian church sought to replace this pagan holiday that honors the dead by declaring October 31st to be All Hallows Eve, which has been transformed into Halloween. During this time, Christians honor those past with All Souls and All Saints Day. Those of us with Mexican or Latin heritage celebrate the Day of the Dead, honoring those past with a picnic on their grave, celebrating their life with stories and food. All of these rituals are reminders of how the past lives in the present. They help us remember and honor our ancestors, and now we have been shaped by them. They help us remember how much of what we do and who we are as individuals and as a culture has been shaped by those who have gone before. As Sarah said, it can be uncomfortable to face our own mortality, the reality that we will not live forever. It can also be uncomfortable to remember our ancestors, not only because they are gone and we may miss them, but sometimes we're uncomfortable because of how our ancestors lived. In the spring of this year, J. Drew Lanham wrote an article in the magazine of the National Audubon Society titled, "What Do We Do About John James Audubon?" We'll put a link to the article in the chat. I highly recommend it. Lanham describes himself as a Black American ornithologist, a Black bird watcher. He tells of his love of all things related to birds from the age of 8, his imagination filled with ideas of roaming the world, watching and collecting birds like the birding hero, John James Audubon. The challenge for Lanham and others is that Audubon owned Black slaves. He bought and sold Black humans. He held and espoused beliefs that Blacks were less than human, suited to enslavement, and that whites were better, suited to being masters of people and of nature. And the story is even more complicated because there is debate about Audubon's heritage. Lanham recounts the story that Audubon's father was a French ship captain who traded slaves. Audubon's mother was French or Haitian Creole. And by some definitions, a Creole is a person of mixed white and Black descent. Definitions of race and identity have morphed over time to both cover and expose truths, so we may never know just exactly who John James Audubon's mother was. It is possible that Audubon was someone of mixed heritage who passed as white. So Lanham asks, quote, "What do we do with a racist, slave-owning, birding God almost 200 years dead? And what do we do with such a man who might have been in denial of his own identity?" Well, one argument is that Audubon, John Muir, and others like them were men of their time and should be judged accordingly. The problem with that is, although Audubon died shortly before the Civil War, he lived in a time when others were actively working to end slavery. We know that Audubon knew about the abolition movement because he wrote and he spoke against it. He could have held a different view about enslaving blacks, and he chose not to. We can understand Audubon's views in the context of his time, and even in the context of what we know about his personal story. But as Lanham writes, racism doesn't get a pass because of historical context. It's still racism. My favorite line from Lanham's article is this: "Deconstructing holiness is hard work." Lanham most certainly dissects Audubon's life and work, showing how racism exists in so many ways, and how the racism of the past lives on in the people, structures, and institutions of today. This kind of holy deconstruction is possible and necessary not only for organizations and institutions, but also for our personal stories. Part of my awakening to racial justice has been developing an understanding of the environment that I grew up in and how that environment shaped me. Both of my grandfathers worked in Muskegon, Michigan, in factories that made parts for the auto plants in Detroit and Flint. They were both members of unions, and they both died young of cancers, most likely caused by industrial toxins. They were both also incredibly racist. I have vivid memories of comments from each of them about Black people in our town and who they worked with. They were taught, and they taught me, that Blacks, especially Black men, were not like us and were dangerous. It wasn't until I was an adult that I learned that the management of auto factories and plants used racism to curb the power of the unions. If management could divide the workers by race, laborers would not unite to fight for better conditions, pay, and benefits, and would remain weak. I imagine that my grandfathers were fed a steady diet of racism from bosses and coworkers, and they believed it. They were seen as expendable and used up by the same system that exploited Blacks. They were all used, and many, like my grandfathers, were all used up. Knowing this history and context has helped me to better understand my grandfathers. It doesn't excuse their racism. They both lived through the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Do I wish they had taken the high road of racial justice? Well, of course I do. But they didn't, for many reasons, some of which I will never know. What I do know is that their choices affected me. They helped create the water that I swam in and the beliefs that I soaked in. My life's work has been to understand where I came from, how I can become more aware, and how I can take the higher road. In his article on Audubon, J. Drew Lanham wrote, quote, "Audubon chose to watch birds and be inhumane. What choices will be made now by conservation organizations? Will there be excuses of context to brush over with paint the truths that need to be revealed? Seeing beauty and advocating for justice are not mutually exclusive acts. I would argue that one can feed the other powerfully." Understanding my grandfathers has helped me put their lives in context so that I can appreciate the beauty and joy that they brought to my life. The story of my grandpa, who had abdominal surgery for his cancer shortly before I was born, so insisted that he gave birth to me, and he had the incision to prove it. The grandpa who taught me to fish on Silver Lake, which was often more about seeking quiet than catching fish. My grandfathers taught me something about love, what it is and what it is not. The beauty of their lives helps me face the harder parts, and that fuels my work for racial justice. This past week, the Audubon Naturalist Society announced that it will no longer go by that name in response to the pain caused by its slaveholder namesake, John James Audubon. Executive Director Lisa Alexander was quoted in The Guardian as saying this: "The mission and vision of the organization have not changed. The deliberate and thoughtful decision to change our name is part of our ongoing commitment to creating a larger and more diverse community of people who treasure the natural world and work to preserve it. It has become clear that this will never be fully possible with the current name." By whatever name it will be called in the future, this naturalist organization committed to saving birds cannot erase John James Audubon any more than I can erase my grandfather's. I wouldn't want to. If my grandpas hadn't existed, I wouldn't be here. But they and we can use the beauty of nature and the work of Audubon to fuel their efforts for justice. Beauty and justice are not mutually exclusive and can feed each other. In order for any of us to fully understand who we are as people, as organizations, as institutions, as a nation, we must understand our entire story, our whole history, even the uncomfortable, ugly, hard parts. James Baldwin wrote that history is not the past, it is the present. We carry our history with us. If we deny, erase, or whitewash what has been, we will never truly know who we are. And without that knowledge, we can never live into who we truly wish to be. I know that some of our ancestors have believed and done horrific and awful things, and sometimes those things were done to us. Those stories are especially hard, and we need support to face that past in order to move into a healthy future. We need the support of our community. And on this Halloween, when the veil between the worlds is thin, I invite you to call upon your ancestors as you are able. Ancestors, be with us. Seek the wholeness of their stories. Invite them gently into your awareness. What stories do they have to tell you about who they were and about who you are? What parts of what they tell you do you wish to take as your own? And which parts do you wish to change? Embrace and even love the whole of it, the beauty and the call for justice. May your Halloween be filled with moments of sweetness and revelation. As we take a breath together, let's move into a time of silence.
Let's sing together our closing hymn. It's hymn number 357, Bright Morning Stars. I would invite you to watch the chat or the order of service for the lyrics, because we've done some different lyrics, the ones that the Waylon Jennings do. Thank you for singing.
Let's extinguish our chalices together with these words by the Reverend Susan McGinn. You are not alone, dear one. You are among all those who have walked this straining path before. You are not alone. You are with the wisdom of all your ancestors who live, if nowhere else, in the cells of your body and breath, remembering you from the very beginning. You are not alone. You are with us. We are right here, smiling and shining upon you like starlight, holding and surrounding you in silence and song, forever renewing our faith in you. May we move in peace.
Let's sing together our Unison Benediction. You can find the lyrics posted in the chat. part of the web of life. We are part of the web of love. May our words, may our deeds